You ever watch the person who's been making your life hell completely lose their mind? Just totally snap, then realize, a split second too late, they were never really in control at all? That was the moment my HOA president, Linda Matthews, stood in my driveway, screaming her lungs out about community codes, while I leaned against my fence, fighting not to laugh. She was threatening fines, emergency votes, all that power trip stuff. But here's what she didn't know. The ground under her heels, under her precious HOA office, even under her own house. It was mine. All of it. Every inch. The day she found out, you could have heard a pin drop between her screeches. But let me back up, because none of this makes sense without the whole wild story. I'm Brandon Miller, 38, part-time rancher, full-time software architect. Oklahoma isn't the most glamorous address in America, but after life in Chicago beat me up one too many times. Bad breakup, pink slip, health scare. I wanted peace. So when my Uncle Tom, a gruff old veteran with the world's kindest eyes, left me his ranch, I packed my things, loaded up my dog Duke, and headed south. For a while, it was perfect. Sunrises, cold dew on boots, goats nibbling the garden. I was fixing fences and painting barns, breathing deep for the first time in years. Then the letters started. First one, crisp and official. Notice, grass 2 inches above code. I laughed. Then the next one, earth tone paint on shed, clashes with approved palette. Another, unauthorized porch swing. By the third letter, I started getting that old corporate heartburn. When Linda finally showed up in person, clipboard, bobbed hair, steel in her eyes, she announced, "That swing's not allowed. Remove it." I joked back. She didn't. Not even a crack in her armor. Now, Linda, she wasn't just some bored neighbor. She was a former high school principal, queen of her castle. And this HOA, it was her fiefdom. When she looked at me, it was like I'd crashed her private party. So sure, I played along at first, cut my grass, painted the shed that dead gray, even sat through one of their chilly meetings. I was the new guy, outsider, trespasser on my own land. But here's the thing. When you're used to software bugs, you start looking for loopholes in real life too. So I started digging, not just in the yard, but through old records, county deeds, dusty boxes my uncle left behind. That's when it hit me like a brick to the gut. Uncle Tom hadn't just left me a ranch. He'd left me the entire original tract, the land that HOA ran on. The houses, the common lots, the so-called community space, the whole thing, on paper, belonged to the Tom Miller Trust. And now, that was me. I didn't flex it right away. Instead, I quietly repainted everything, house, barn, mailbox, in a color that made the whole place glow gold at sunset. Neighbors walked by and whispered approval if Linda wasn't watching. I smiled, nodded, kept painting. But I knew what was coming. The day I finished, Linda stormed up my driveway, heels clicking like a countdown timer. "You didn't get approval, Mr. Miller," she shrieked. I just stood there, arms folded, Duke wagging his tail. "You can't do this. I'll make sure you regret it," she shouted, voice echoing off the hills. That's when I dropped the bomb. "I own the HOA lot, Linda." For a second, the whole world paused. She stared, mouth open, trying to process. And then, a loud crack from the barn. We both spun around. A heavy, newly painted beam broke loose and came crashing down, right where Duke had been sitting. Everything turned to chaos. Neighbors ran out. Linda screamed for someone to call 911. I dropped to my knees, hands shaking, digging through splinters, searching for my dog. Then, finally, a soft whimper, a wagging tail. He was okay, not unscathed, but okay. In the middle of all of that madness, I realized just how high the stakes had gotten. It wasn't about paint anymore, not grass, not swings. This was personal. I got Duke to the vet. Thank God for good neighbors like Jake and Heather, who helped me load him up and waited with me. On the way, Jake asked if it was true. Did I really own all that land? Every inch, I said, but I wanted to see just how far Linda would go. And man, she went far. The next few days, I drafted a formal notice to the board, stating my rights as the landowner, polite, legal, but firm. Delivered a copy to every member. When I handed Linda hers, she was in her bathrobe, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. She slammed the door in my face, but the shriek that followed rattled the windows. The whispers started, neighbors slipping me notes, asking if I could dissolve the HOA or begging me not to. But Linda wasn't giving up. She got nasty, sending emails about unsanctioned paint, dangerous animals, community disruption. Then my goats vanished, right out the open gate. Coincidence? Yeah, right. The sheriff did what he could, but we both knew what this was. Retaliation. One night, Heather called in a panic. "They're trying to vote you out, Brandon. Special motion. Linda's twisting the rules." Storm clouds were rolling in as I raced to the town hall, rain pouring, heart pounding. The meeting was already in full swing, Linda up front, red blazer, microphone in hand, laying out her case. I was the problem. I was the disruption. And the community would be harmonious if only I left. I let her finish. Then I walked in, flash drive in hand, and asked the AV guy to pull up my scanned documents. Up on the screen went the deed, the trust, my name on every page. "You can't kick out the guy who owns the ground you're standing on," I said, and let it hang there. A few people gasped. A few nodded. Linda looked like she'd been slapped with a cold fish. For the first time, the board didn't know what to say. But even as it seemed like the tide was turning, my phone buzzed. Blocked number. The text chilled me. "Hope your ranch doesn't burn down like the last one." That was no HOA threat. That was a warning. My uncle had told me stories about a developer, Raymond Keyes, who tried to buy the land years ago. Legal threats, even a barn fire. Was history repeating? Next day, I dug deeper. County records, old contracts, fire reports marked undetermined cause. It was all there. Keyes was circling back, this time using legal loopholes, pushing the board to dissolve the HOA so he could snap up the land for pennies. That's what Linda, blinded by her own power games, didn't see. Then the notice went up. Emergency vote to dissolve HOA, sponsored by Rise Development Group. That was Keyes, slick as ever, smiling in his suit at the next meeting, promising freedom from fines and new development. The crowd listened, half convinced, half scared. But when I stood up and told the whole story, about my uncle, about the land, about what would really happen if the HOA vanished. People started whispering, asking questions. Just as we were about to vote, the fire alarm went off. Shed behind the building, up in flames. Keys slipped out the side exit, phone in hand. Classic chaos tactic. Scare folks, make them desperate for a fix. But the fire didn't end it. The vote was postponed, and now everyone was looking at Keys a little differently. I rallied my friends, Jake, Heather, even old Miss Carla. We canvassed, handed out flyers, organized a real town hall outside HOA jurisdiction. People showed up, curious, worried, ready to listen. I showed them the documents, the old threats, the forged signatures. I laid it all out, raw and plain. This wasn't about me. It was about all of us. Linda disappeared after the fire. Turns out, she wasn't evil, just scared, maybe in over her head. She showed up at my place one night, no makeup, shaking. Handed me a folder, proof of bribes, emails from Keys, her own signature on dirty deals. "Stop him," she whispered, "before he ruins everything." With her evidence, the sheriff opened a case. The next community meeting, I laid it all bare. The crowd was angry, scared, but finally united. Then Keys showed up, all cool arrogance, and tried to threaten me in front of everyone. But that's when Deputy Morgan stepped in, hand on his gun, and read out the charges: fraud, intimidation, bribery. They took Keys away in cuffs, and for the first time I felt the whole place exhale. Relief, justice, but also unease, because the calls didn't stop. A blocked number, a deep voice. Keys wasn't working alone. Then, a knock at my door. Carl Bennett, vice president of the HOA, pale and sweaty. He confessed other board members had taken bribes, sent photos, followed me home. But he'd testify. He'd help clean it up. I believed him. After that, the dominoes fell. The sheriff raided the board members' homes, recovered deleted emails, shredded files. The town rallied. Neighbors who once glared at me now showed up with paint, tools, even cookies. Even Linda offered to help rewrite the bylaws. We built a new charter, named for my uncle, protected the land, made rules for real people, not just power-hungry busybodies. And finally, the community felt like home. 2 months later, with the bad actors out and the neighborhood coming back to life, I sat on my porch, Duke at my side, and posted a picture of the ranch in golden sunset. Just one sentence: "This is what home looks like when we protect it together." For a while, it was quiet. Then an email arrived. Linda again, but this time from another town, asking for help. Turns out, this fight never really ends. And as Duke nudged my hand and the sun slipped behind the hills, I realized peace isn't something you find. It's something you fight for. So, if you were in my boots, would you have fought back or just let it all go?